Hey everybody, welcome to Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page. On this episode, the chef behind one of my favorites here on the Jersey Shore. Born in Peru, trained under some of the world's greatest chefs, he now owns his version of a diner. Here's Diego Sanchez. Chef, how are you? Thanks for joining me.
I'm great, David. Thank you for having me.
You've cooked in some of the most celebrated kitchens on earth. Why'd you buy a diner?
Indeed, yes, I had to cook with some of the greatest chefs in the world. However, my passion for this industry started in a diner, and I always took that with me everywhere I went because of how fast-paced he was and how challenging it was. And you were able to do pretty much anything in the diner: breakfast, lunch, dinner. Back in the day, we had chops and steaks.
And today on your menu, you have some pretty sophisticated dishes.
Correct.
From all over the place. Let's start, before we get to the menu, tell me your story. Where were you born?
I was born in Huancayo, Peru. I'm the third child of 5 boys. I moved to the States in 1999 when I was 14, turning 15 years old.
Were you always interested in cooking?
I was always involved in cooking in a way that whenever we went to see my grandmother, she actually had a garden, and she will send us to pick up peppers, zucchinis right off the ground. Perhaps my dad, he's an electrician, but he loves cooking. And he cooks very well, actually. So that's my mom.
What was the kind of food you would eat at home?
On any given day, my dad had this electric rotisserie, and he would throw in whole chicken on soy sauce, guinea pigs.
Don't tell me they taste like chicken, right?
No, they don't. They don't. I would say more like a duck.
Like what?
A duck.
Duck, okay.
Or a pigeon.
Is this true? I have read that in Peru, there are like 200 kinds of potatoes.
3,000, as a matter of fact.
And how are they different? I mean, a potato's a potato. How are they different?
A lot of them are different in a way that color-wise, shape-wise, starch content. Like the yellow potatoes are used for the causa. I don't know if you're familiar with that dish. It's like a potato dumpling, cold, chilled potato dumpling. They have another one that is called runtu wasi, like a balls. Because it has that shape, it's very interesting, and the only difference is the altitude of the Andes or where they're harvested.
So where you grew up, were there local potato varieties?
Yes, there was a lot of yellow potatoes, a lot of black potatoes. Like really, you cut them in half. They were almost like a beet.
Wow.
Yeah.
And a specific taste profile.
Correct. They were very sandy. A lot of starch. Ideally, those were eaten just boiled and with some fresh cheese or some type of spicy sauce.
We'll get back to the food in a bit, but interrupted your story. So you came to the States at 14 with your father?
14 years old with my father and my brother, correct.
To do what? Obviously, you continued going to school here?
Yeah, in Jersey, where I graduated. I work at an IHOP as a server. I work at Wendy's. While going to high school, I remember, at Walmart. Walmart had a something that was called the Radio Grill, where they made sandwiches, stuff like that. So then I got a job as a server at the Bedminster. In Bedminster, it was called the Thirsty Turtle. But I always wanted to be involved in the kitchen. I always wanted to be, back there with the chefs, calling the orders, the banging of the plates. That's where I found me again after living in Peru. Because when I was in Peru, I had a family. I have friends from a very young age. I would say I was very outgoing, and all that stopped when I moved here because I didn't have any friends. The language barrier, so it kind of put a hold on my development, I will say, or my youth, But in the kitchen is where I found like my hood again, my neighborhood. It brought a lot of happiness to me. So I decided to join the line. One day, one of the cooks didn't show up, and I told the chef, I said, you should let me do this. And he was like, not today, maybe another time. And then again, no one showed up, and I was like, let's look. And he goes, all right, so tell me what goes on this salad. And I was like, dried cranberries, candy walnuts, mixed greens, and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, okay, take your best off. Here's an apron, go in the back. I did, and it was a great outcome. I was very happy. He was very happy with my performance. And that's where everything started.
Was this a fine dining restaurant? Was it what was
that? Was like a tavern. It was very fast-paced, high-end food. It wasn't fine dining. One of the cooks that were working there, guide me towards the Galaxy Diner in Rahway, New Jersey, where they were needing a line cook that knew how to saute and broil and grill. They were paying a lot more than what I was making there, and I gave it a shot. Back then, the Galaxy Diner was super busy. If I can tell you, maybe we were doing 3,000 covers in a day.
What?
So it was very fast paced, very fast paced. So a Navy veteran, his name was Pete. We were working the 11 to 9 shift, and he goes, listen, you have a lot of talent, and I think you should attend culinary school if that's what you want to do. Because he was telling me, what's your end goal? And I will say, I want to wear those long hats, cook with the chefs, maybe run a cruise, a hotel. He was like, well, in here, you're not going to make that. You need to go to school and educate yourself. And that's how I enrolled in the Art Institute of New York City.
In their cooking program?
Yes, the Culinary Art and Restaurant Management.
Did you take to it? I mean, was it easy? Did it feel like this is where you should be?
It definitely was something that I wanted to do. I definitely look forward going to school every day. The only thing was that at that age, I already had a daughter. I needed to work. And, kitchens still, are like 40, 50 plus hours.
Yeah.
There's no 9 to 5. So the challenge was to attend the school full time so I can graduate in 2 years, to keep on working because I needed, I was a head of a household, and, to put everything else aside in the meantime.
Right.
So I decided to do that, not thinking very wisely on the commute, I was leaving in Edison at 5 o'clock in the morning to make it into Manhattan at 7, leaving Manhattan at 2, 3 p.m. to make it into work at 5 to 3 in the morning, 5 days a week for 2 years.
Oh, my God.
It took a lot, but I graduated with high honors. I never missed a day of school. And that was the year that the Giants won the Super Bowl.
Over my beloved Patriots?
I think so. Was that in 2000?
Well, this interview's over. Screw it.
I remember that because, they called us and were like, school is closed for the day because the Giants are coming back into town after they won the Super Bowl. And I was like, finally a day off, full day off. But, everything paid off. Everything paid off.
Okay, you graduate with high honors. You need a job. So what happened?
My counselor came to me. He goes, listen, you can go to John George's at Spice Market. You can go at Danielle if you like. You have pretty much in every...
Jean-Georges von Richten, Danielle is Danielle Boulud. I mean, these are...
Danielle Boulud, yes, Eric Repair, Ella Bernardine. So because I was high honors, they allowed me to choose wherever I needed to go to do my externship because I needed to do 150 hours of externship.
So where'd you go?
I chose the Spice Market.
Jean George.
With John George.
Why?
It was closer to the school. At that time, he was going to open ABC Kitchen. He had already Spice Market. Remind you, this was a free externship.
Yeah, the nice word is a stage or something, but it's free labor.
So I chose John George. He had a Spice Market had a menu that was my interest. It was a great experience. Made a lot of connections, a lot of friends.
Did you learn things there that you had not learned in culinary school?
Yes. So when I enrolled in culinary school, I already was cooking for at least 4 years.
Right.
So knife skills weren't an issue for me. It was more of the terminology for tools that we use in the kitchen. It was more of recipe development. It was more of accountability of recipes, inventories. And then, a restaurant ran in Bedminster, New Jersey was totally different from the Spice Market in Manhattan, downtown Manhattan. So in there, I learned, how to utilize every corner of a store, every corner of the real estate, different platings, different forms of creativity. It was a very, very interesting experience. Every kitchen I went through on how to manage, grow, control so much employees, the steps of service. Very eye-opening experiences.
Did you interact with Jean-Georges himself ever?
Yeah, of course, he directly communicated with his executive chef, his chef de cuisine. But, from time to time, he will walk in the kitchen, do a pre-shift meeting. I work side by side with him.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
What next?
Le Bernardin with Eric Repair.
Considered by many the best restaurant in America.
It is. It is. The way they work with fish is amazing.
It's one thing to say, so then I went to Le Bernardin. They don't take just anybody.
It was mostly referrals from Again, friends that we made in culinary school. And again, I was cooking for so long, I didn't have to go in and mess up their fish. Up until now, I think it's that way in the culinary world that, it's all about who you know and who refers you to get where you want to get.
Any particularly good memory about Le Bernardin?
That's where I met Leonardo Marina. At that time was his executive chef. Le Bernardin was one of those kitchens where super French, super clean.
What do you mean by super French? The brigade system, I assume. But
the brigades and the way they had the system in place. You felt like you were walking into a surgery room. The way they pre-shift, a lot of places don't use them anymore. They had a board where the specials and portions, where it was like an algorithm for the kitchen. 2010, technology was nowhere near where we are now to create recipes and what to do with the leftovers. It was an amazing experience.
Can you sum up why they're just so damn great?
It's about the team. It's about the team. It's about team building. Every kitchen relies heavily on the chain of command and the team.
Was it a quiet kitchen?
It was, to a point, on service time was all hands on deck. But all you hear was the chef's voice, whoever was expediting, and the reply, the callbacks. Yes, chef, no chef, her chef.
So you cook at Le Bernardin, which is unbelievable. What next?
When I left Le Bernardin after 6 months of stage, Leonardo Marino leaves and he goes to consult with Chef Craig Shelton, the opening of the new Skylar Diner in Addison. Constantine, who was the CEO of the company, had a vision for diners back then to make them better, to make them finer, higher end. And they tell me, listen, you want to be part of the opening team because it's a new project, you have diner experience, you live in Addison, everything just was at the right moment. I took it. We developed some nice recipes. The difference was, we were doing, instead of doing 150 covers Le Bernardin, we were doing 300 covers for lunch.
Wow.
Almost at the same level. So we introduced sous vide at that time, a lot of things that I use in my kitchen now. The project goes well. He goes his way as a consultant. I go my way. I get back in the restaurants in New York City. Chef Gaston Acurio opens Lamar Cevicheria in New York City. And I met Chef Victoriano. He talks to me and he goes, you're Peruvian. You are actually at the right moment because we're looking for a sous chef. So I took the job. It's a Peruvian cevicheria. So mind you, I moved from Peru at 14 years old. I started cooking in restaurants. I ate Peruvian food all my life, but I was never really involved into cooking Peruvian food.
Wait, so now you're learning how to make the food you grew up with.
Correct. And all of a sudden, Chef Victoriano tells me, listen, go ahead and make, some leche de tigre because we're running out. And I looked at him dead in the eyes and I'm like, Chef, I have never made a leche de tigre in my life.
What's the dish? Leche, milk,
leche de
what?
tigre. Tiger's milk, which is the base for ceviche.
Gotcha.
And I told him, I said, I never made it. I tried it. I can tell you if yours is good or not, but I never. He goes, how come he kind of gets disappointed because he hired me. And I'm like, I can make you a Bernays. I can make you a Hollandaise, Espagnol, and aioli. I never made a leche de tigre. So at Lamar with Gaston Acurio, I learned my roots of Peruvian cuisine at a very high standards.
What next?
I was there for a couple of years. They closed. It didn't work out.
It's my sense that despite the fact that it's an incredibly wonderful cuisine, Peruvian food has had a very hard time getting a following in the United States.
Yes.
Why?
I think we need more exposure. I got to say we came a long way, but we're not where we need to be in the States, or at least in this part of the country, because Miami, it's booming. California is booming. New York, I will say, if you ask me what happened with Lamar in New York City, I will say, we were just too new, too fresh. At that moment, there was, every celebrity had a restaurant in every corner. Gordon Shelley had a Butter. Bobby Flay had 10 restaurants around. It was a very crowded moment for him to introduce the food. No, now, I can name you 10 Peruvian restaurants in the city that are popping right now.
Okay, well, you and I are going to go to one of those.
Yes, indeed. There's one that just opened that I want to go so bad. After Lamar, I come back to Jersey, Chris Michaels' Steakhouse in Woodbridge, where I was executive chef. In there, I meet one Greek guy that used to do a lot of consulting. He convinced me to open up a Greek restaurant with him. And I'm like, yes, diners were owned by Greeks. I know some Greek dishes, but, he goes, listen, we're going to go out to eat at every Greek restaurant in the city, and you're gonna replicate that. And I was like, and we did. We opened up 11 Hanover Greek. I opened up Amilos Greek restaurant.
Your capacity to embrace and master a variety of cuisines is tremendously impressive. Was it hard?
I will say it's my only talent. It's my passion, and I was lucky enough to discover it at a very young age, because I have family members that they go to school for 4 years to become an accountant, and they realize they want to be a nurse, or vice versa.
Right.
But I always consider myself lucky enough to be able to discover what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, because if I was born again, I would choose to be a chef again.
Well, let's talk about Greek cuisine for just a brief moment. It is popular in the United States, but I think underappreciated in its breadth. You say Greek cuisine and people say dolmades, if they even know the word.
Yeah.
They might say grape leaves. Moussaka, gyros, which half of the people call a gyro. What were you doing beyond that?
So we were doing a lot of grilled fish, a lot of just simply grilled, salt, pepper.
Olive oil, lemon?
Off the grill, olive oil, lemon.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing a lot of grilled octopus. We were recreating pastas, but what I really enjoy out of the Greek cuisine was their sides. They're like spinach and rice, which was the spanakouris, the steamed escarole that they do, they're big giant beans that are called gigantas. And, the spinach pie, I think it's such an underrated piece of food that it goes well on a salad, on top of a salad. So when I was playing around with that, this constructing the salad, one of the dishes that I never had it before, and I just popped it right on my mind was, how they have that lucumades, which is a dessert.
I don't.
It's like a fried donuts for them.
Explain that again. I'm sorry. What is it?
Lucumades, it's something like a light donut. It's something like a cepoli, little lighter than a cepoli.
Yep.
It's a dessert dish. I figure, we were getting a lot of seafood. We were getting rock shrimp out of Montauk, nice and sweet and tender. So I'm like, what will happen if I take rock shrimp, dip it into the lucumades dough, fry it, and then glaze it with some honey, some yogurt, some ouzo, and boom, we just invented a new dish.
You were making shrimp donuts?
Yes. And it took off. It was very popular, and that's how I got my name in the Greek restaurants industry. I gotta say, it's very popular food. It's very healthy food, very commercial, and it's also on my list, on my bucket list, to have and own a Greek restaurant. After that, one of my servers from the city calls me up, and again, we go back to everything is about who reference that you left behind. So I get a phone call. Jose calls me and he goes, "We're gonna open up a kosher steakhouse, and the chef is having a hard time finding a sous chef. I think you should give it a try."
Kosher, Jewish kosher. Yeah, okay.
Jewish kosher, rabbi on site and everything.
Had you any experience with kosher cuisine?
Never. When we interview, he goes, "Look, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, a lot of people get discouraged because you can get as creative as you want. Either we use dairy or non-dairy."
And also, I'm Jewish. I don't keep kosher, but I'm familiar. The cuts of meat you could use had to be from parts of the cow.
From the seventh rib up on the beef.
Because it had to have fewer blood vessels, and then you had to salt it to draw the blood out, right? How do you save that piece of meat?
Well, you got it purchased from a kosher
right.
certified.
But
kosher.
It sounds like a tougher, less attractive cut. So are you braising it mostly?
Actually, in my opinion, in my experience, the best meat I had was kosher meat.
Really?
The best. Yes. I mean, they don't eat filet mignon.
Right.
So what they do is they take the eye out of the ribeye. Like they use that as a filet mignon, and the lip of the ribeye, which is the best cut of beef, in my opinion, they use that as their high-end steak because you can only get so many out of one ribeye, right?
Were you also making other Ashkenazi Jewish dishes?
We were doing, yes, of course. We were doing the lefkes. And, the things that I appreciate from them was that the sweetbreads.
I love sweet. My grandmother made sweetbreads. Oh, they're so good.
Here in my diner, I have a matzah ball on the menu 7 days. And, I stopped it for a while and they're like, "No, we want it back." But it was a very challenging opportunity because, again, you had to keep dairy, non-dairy. The rabbi had to be there. For some reason, I'm walking in with my Starbucks coffee, and the rabbi goes from the other corner, like, wait, where are you going? I'm like, "I'm going to get dressed." He's like, "What do you have in your cup?" I said, coffee. With what? With milk. Get out of here. Throw it away. I mean, that's how restricted they are. So now here you are, trying to make a beurre blanc with no butter or a creamy spinach with no cream for the steakhouse.
And you're able to do that?
Yes, we were able to, just cashew nuts blend to replicate the cheese for the mac and cheese. You had your limitations, but we got as close as we could to that.
Right.
Now they have everything, like non-dairy cheese that melts and pulls. But at least I wasn't doing none of that. It was just whatever came out of here.
What happened next?
I decided to go do my own catering company and chef consultant, but nothing was popping up out there. A friend of mine that comes from Peru, he knows Danielle very well.
Danielle Balut.
Yeah. So he introduced me to Danielle.
How was that interview?
Danielle, in my eyes, is one of the most successful chefs in the world and the most humble ones.
Really?
He was at Danielle chef clothes, super humble, going to table. And he goes, as a matter of fact, we're needing a sous chef over at Bistro Balut.
On the Upper West Side?
On the Upper West Side.
Center? Yeah.
He goes, if you're looking for an opportunity, go see, who was it? I think it was Eddie Leroux was running that location. We met, we spoke, did a tasting, and I was quickly enrolled with them. Very straightforward company, plenty of systems in place, lots of creativity, super French recipes, pâtés done on site. It was a great experience. I was there very shortly for about 7 months until I was approached by an investor and, to do a Peruvian restaurant in Brooklyn. He sugarcoated it a lot.
What a shock in the restaurant industry.
Long story short, weeks from opening, we depart our own ways because nothing was on paper, whatever words we exchange. I was very disappointed, mostly broken heart, because I put so much time into that place. And that's when I get a call from one of my colleagues and says, listen, Chef Edgar, it's in the Bahamas. He's going to open up the SLS resort. He's looking for chefs. He knows you. I recommended you. You got to do a tasting out of formality, but pretty much you got the job. So at that point, it was the perfect time for me to leave New York City. That was in 2019, and we opened up the SLS and the Baja Beach Club of the Baja Mar Resort. I was in the Bahamas for about, all the way to COVID.
And what kind of food were you serving there?
I was running a pool, 3 bar restaurants. It was burgers, hot dogs, poke bowls, elevated food, hotel food. Pretty interesting experience. Amazing island. I was a lot more relaxed than what I was used to in New York City. I was probably brought to HR like 4 or 5 times within 3 months because of my expectations of the staff versus the reality of the staff. But, by any means, really great people, really great country, a lot of good memories, a lot of colleagues.
So then what?
Then COVID hit. It's a mission to close a resort of that caliber and size. I left the Bahamas on April. At that time, they told us 3 months, we'll reopen in 3 months. And then those turned into 3 more months. I came back to New York. It was nothing in New York to do as well, Around June, some of my friends were opening up the restaurants and they needed an extra hand, and I was there to help them. We were developing, the ghost kitchens now, how to take out food and so on. But the uncertainty of when we were gonna go back to work was always there. So around I would say October, November of 2020, the guy that I used to do consulting with in the Greek restaurants reaches out to me and he goes, listen, you should come to Austin, Texas. You're not doing anything. So I said, what's in the works? He goes, listen, we were supposed to open up a Greek restaurant here. Will you be up for it? I said, let me come down and see you. So I stayed in a week in Austin. I really liked it, especially because it was one of the first states to reopen at 25% capacity, Texas. I got there on a Thursday, and I was supposed to leave on a Sunday, but he said, stay one more day because you're going to see how 6th Street is, which is a very famous street in Austin. So we were there on Sunday. Everything was barricaded, closed, but they started to reopen it because Monday was going to go back to 25% capacity. And he goes, stay one more day. You're going to see what's going to happen here on this street that you see empty. It was like airplane went by and dropped thousands of people. Imagine Texas was closed for so long. Bars you open, live music. It was booming. So he goes, listen, the job is yours if you want. This is what we can pay you very aggressively. So now the ball is on your court. You make the decision to go back to the Bahamas and be a hotel chef, or you come to Austin, Texas and open up the first fine dining Greek restaurant. He called me back around November, September to tell me, listen, the project is back at full speed right now. We're looking to open December, so you gotta let me know now. What are you doing? So I decided to go to Texas, and I moved to Austin, Texas, to open up the Greek restaurant. Very successful. I mean, we were the first Abra Milos style restaurant in Austin. We were flying in fish from New York City because it was very hard to find Brancinos, very hard to find Dorats around there. What we were getting our hands on a lot was snapper from the Gulf. Lobster was bringing in. So it was a very successful concept. Around August of 2022, I clearly remember I woke up one day and I said, what am I doing here in Austin? Still working for somebody. I was familiar with ghost kitchens. I was familiar with budgeting, and I had some savings. And I decided one day, I said, listen, I'm gonna do my own kitchen, my own ghost kitchen in Austin. It's gonna be Peruvian food. It's now or never. My friends say you're crazy. You were just mentioned in every magazine in Austin, Texas. But hey, whatever makes you happy. And I went to open up the first Peruvian ghost kitchen in Texas. Few weekends before, I was expediting 8 cooks, 4 runners, and 3 weeks forward, I was sitting in my ghost kitchen just waiting for my tablets to go off so I can make some ceviches or something to sell, and thinking, did I do the right move? Did I take the right step? And so on. It took off to a point within 6 months, I turned into a brick and mortar. For legal reasons, I cannot disclose the name, but if you type my full name, Austin, Texas, Google is more than happy to show you. My landlord bought my business. It was a very interesting year of bringing Peruvian food to the fullest in Austin.
And then it kind of collapsed in the sort of legal garbage that is normal in the restaurant business.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is. If I can give an advice to any young entrepreneur chef that is always work and has his mentality, get legal advice before you even give out a recipe. You never know what's the other's person intentions, and it doesn't hurt to get legal advice on anything that they might want to do in this industry. It's a very shady industry, I gotta say.
So what happened next?
I leave my restaurant in Austin, Texas. I take some time off, and I was looking for opportunities within Austin. I wanted to stay there, but nothing really interesting. I was gonna do another concept in Austin as well. Nothing was getting me into the move, to put the restaurant in the past. Through one of my LinkedIn friends, I get a lead for the Fontainebleau. Chef JP John Paul calls me. We set up an interview. We set up a tasting. And within a month, I was at the Fontainebleau as the chef de cuisine for Vita, which is the restaurant that serves breakfast and lunch.
For anyone who might not know, the Fontainebleau is one of the most storied hotels ever in Miami.
Yes, it's an iconic property.
So what were you serving there?
I was doing in-room dining. I was doing breakfast, lunch. I was running a sushi program.
Did you know anything about sushi at that point?
Yeah, of course. I'm Peruvian. We eat sushi in a different way.
Pardon me. Yes, absolutely. Okay.
And I was transitioning to open the Fontainebleau Vegas, which was months away from when I got hired at the Fontainebleau Miami. Miami is not what I thought it was. It was much more expensive. The commute from where I lived in Miami to Miami Beach was exaggerated, but the hotel itself was very inspiring, very professional.
But the lifestyle there was not to your liking.
It wasn't to my like. Maybe 10 years ago would have been. Not now.
So is this when you came back to Jersey?
Yeah, so that's when I was talking to friends from here, from Jersey. And one of them tells me there is a place for sale in Manahawkin, New Jersey. It's a diner.
Which is where I live, and that's how we first met, I should point out, when I went to your restaurant. It's on the Jersey Shore.
So I came down, first time in Manahawkin. The place was still open. I come into the place, I look at the place, I visit the area, and I always trusted my gut feeling. As soon as I walked into the place, I looked around, I said, I can do something here. I think this is calling my name.
You've done everything at this point. You've done all kinds of food. You've done all kinds of restaurants. And you see this place, and do you think to yourself, I want to make a classic diner. I want to make an upscale. What was your vision?
I definitely wanted to remain as a diner, meaning serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner all times of the day. But I had to level up to my vision, to my techniques, to my taste. I knew it was gonna be a challenge because of just what the perception of diners is for people. But like everything else, everything is it's innovating, everything is changing, and that played into my favor. Yes, I will say I discourage a lot of probably regular customers that were coming here, which I wish they could come back and see what I done for the place. I had a lot of criticism the first 3-4 months I was here probably, but that never turned me down. If anything, it just gave me more fuel to keep on doing what I was doing. My team was a very key of the success of the place. I was able to translate to them my vision for the business, for the food, and how easy it could be to just make things nice and more approachable to people. And we could be labeled as a diner, but that doesn't mean anything. We can serve anything we want here.
So what's some of the anything you want that you put on the menu that I might not find at the average diner?
Perhaps migas.
Crispy tortillas in eggs, right?
Crispy tortillas into scrambled eggs that are eaten in a taco. I was able to bring barbacoa into an omelet.
How the hell did you decide at the Jersey Shore to serve that Oklahoma, Texas favorite chicken fried steak? And by the way, I went to school in Oklahoma, and your chicken fried steak is terrific. How did that end up on your menu?
We go back to when I was in Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas was a very multi-diverse culinary experience because you have the Tex-Mex, you have the Oklahoma, the Kansas influence, the country. And as I told you, everywhere I go, I go to try everything, And wherever I go, I put it in my backpack and it's coming back to me to the restaurant at some point, I don't just come back and say, let's copy and paste this plate. No, I just start looking, when is the good move to put it on? What would it be? I would make it to myself. Is it hard to execute when you have to do another 20 pancakes and French toast, and it's over easy, and most importantly, how will the customer take it,
You have customers here who live in Jersey, which has the most diners of any state in the country. Are they embracing, I guess better is a fair word, a slightly better version of standards?
They are. I do get a lot of compliments from my customers on how we were able to change things up, create something new. They're coming to have 2 extra burgers with home fries, and then all of a sudden they saw an avocado toast with fig and pomegranate seeds and fig jam and poached eggs, and they're like, I came here to have eggs and bacon. Now I'm having an avocado toast, which I never thought of. I don't even like avocado. So those are things that get to me and inspire me to be more creative, more aggressively. Now for dinner, I have a lomo saltado,
which is a Peruvian favorite.
It's the most famous Peruvian dish. Lomo saltado, it's pretty much a stir fry of beef, onions, tomatoes, cilantro, scallions on a soy ginger glaze, served over French fries with the side of rice, because we love our starch.
Am I going to see anticulchos? For those who don't know, grilled beef heart.
Yes, I might not use beef heart, but I'm going to use beef.
Okay. Give me some examples of other cultures. I mean, you have birria on the menu, which is like the hottest Mexican dish going right now.
Correct. I have a baoban, which is Asian-inspired slider. I recently put up a German sauerbraten on the menu.
Ooh. Let me know when you're going to make charcuterie if you're making German food.
Okay. For sure. I had a schnitzel sandwich on my first launch of the menu, which people, again, are asking me to bring it back.
Hey, I lived in Germany. Bring it back.
We will. Yeah, definitely. And again, and that's what I always thought about a diner, There's no limits to it. Versus you do a Peruvian restaurant, you will never be able to put a gnocchi.
You have gnocchi on the menu?
I do have a gnocchi on the menu, a truffle gnocchi.
Handmade?
Handmade.
Okay, so now comes the reality of running a business. Your standards are very, very high. Can you enforce those? For example, what takes a diner over the top for me is if you make your corned beef hash from scratch, which you do. How do you enforce that kind of let's make it right in a diner kitchen?
One of the things I learned throughout my career is repetition and leading by example. And most importantly, explaining everything to your prep team, to your cook, or your line cooks, to your staff, to the minimum, to avoid any misconfusion or miscommunication. Because we tend to assume that because I said put it this way and that way, they will understand what it is, right? So with things that I done here, I sit and do it with one of them over and over and over again, and I let them do it, and I spot check, and I train two of my line cooks to spot check with me. It's a very hands-on operation, day-to-day operation, which is good and bad, because then if you have to be involved, when do you have time to grow? One thing I learned from Daniel Boulud was, I clearly remember one of the meetings we had, I asked him, I said, Chef Daniel, how do you manage to run kitchens all over the world? He goes, Diego, you always go where you don't trust, because the human mentality is always trained to go where you feel safe. And I look like, well, how does that relate to the kitchen, to the industry? I was like, Chef, can you elaborate on that? Because you just lost me. He goes, for example, Diego, when we hire you and put you at Bistro Boulud, we had one person looking at you, watching you, because you were new in the team. And most likely you will drop the ball if the ball was dropped. But once we learn that you can hold the ball, we don't watch you anymore. You have to go where you think is the weakest point and stand there.
A management course would put that under delegation, wouldn't it?
Correct. You have to delegate. You have to trust who you delegate things to.
But that's because you're teaching.
Correct.
And going forward, what should I expect to see on the menu?
So for summer, I will bring ceviche, classic Peruvian ceviche, to the menu. Now that the patio will be open, I will try to do a tapas night, at least 3-4 nights out of the week, where people can come in with their wine and try a little bit of tolmades, keftedes, maybe some arancinis, some causas, some anticuchos, all shareable meals.
Because sharing a meal, well, you have great experience with Greek food, and it was Epicurus, a Greek philosopher, who is quoted as having said, when you're planning a meal, first decide who you're going to eat with.
Correct.
Then pick the food, because it's a social experience. It's fabulous. You got any advice for up-and-coming chefs?
Never stop dreaming. If you chose this career, it comes with a lot of hard work, but this is one of the industries where you can say the hard work pays off.
And it certainly seems to have for you.
Indeed. Thank God.
Chef, it's such a pleasure to talk with you. Now that I'm a regular at your place, I look forward to seeing you a lot.
Oh,
folks, the food there is fabulous. It's 39 degrees north in Manahawkin, New Jersey, and it is so much more than a diner. Chef, thank you again.
David, my pleasure having you at the restaurant. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It was a great experience, conversation that we had.
Chef, I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diego Sanchez on Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page, and I'll see you next time.